Today's passage is Luke chapter 11, verses 1 to 4. Most people, even these days, can say, or at least recognise, the Lord's Prayer. And those of us who say it frequently probably have our favourite versions. We call it the Lord's Prayer because the kernel of it comes from this passage in the Gospels, where both Luke and Matthew record Jesus teaching his disciples how to pray. You may have been surprised that Luke's version is so short, and a good deal shorter than what you know by heart. Matthew adds another couple of phrases, "Your will be done," and "deliver us from evil." The end that we say about the kingdom, the power and the glory is a later church edition. But essentially, it was a very short and simple prayer which Jesus taught them. Remember, all his teaching was oral and all of it was memorised. So it had to be in short and easily memorable form. People's memories, of course, in those days were a lot more accurate than they are now. They got a good deal more practice remembering things than we do. Memory's like muscle. Use it or lose it, as they say. And the more you use it, apparently, the more it grows. So straight away we've learnt something about prayer. It doesn't need to be long-winded. According to Matthew, Jesus said, "In your prayers, do not heap up empty phrases like the Gentiles do, for they think they will be heard because of their many words." When you think about it, that makes obvious sense, because of course God knows all our needs and our requests before we utter them. He doesn't need to be informed about anything. And also God longs to give us good gifts. He doesn't need to be persuaded against his will. What God does want is our company, our attention, and our love. People are wont to ask, does prayer work? Certainly prayer works, in the sense that conversations between friends work. They build up trust and understanding between friends and develop and strengthen that relationship. I think it's a good deal more helpful to think of prayer as building relationship than to think of it as being like a slot machine. If we imagine prayer as like a machine where you put your coin in and out comes the chocolate bar, we may be very disappointed at the results of our prayers. My friend is unlikely to be able to solve all my problems, but I still want to tell them, and I'll find a good deal of relief and support in being listened to and having their empathy. I can certainly cope better after that conversation. The follow-on question is, does God answer prayer? Well, yes, God does answer prayer, of course. But the thing is, we may not understand the answer or perhaps even like it. Fans of The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy may remember the computer Deep Thought, which was built to find the answer to the question, what is the meaning of life? It did find the answer. You may remember it was 42. But it knew that the scientists would be really disappointed because they wouldn't understand the answer when they had it. This is comedy, but there's truth there as well. Rather like Job, who was demanding answers from God. Why am I suffering? And in response was bombarded with questions by God, questions which he couldn't answer. He didn't have the capacity of knowledge or understanding. Job got the point. If God told him the reason for his suffering, he wouldn't have understood it. It wasn't within the capacity of human understanding. One of the most moving stories about prayer outside of Scripture that I know is the story about the priest Jean Vianney, who asked the farmer, he used to sit in the church every day for quite some time. He asked him what he did. The farmer replied, "Nothing. I look at him and he looks at me." Could there be a better way of expressing a relationship of love where words are hardly even needed? Most of us do need words as we try to build up our relationship of trust and understanding with God. And the Lord's Prayer is a good place to start. It's a good example of a brief prayer that's focused on God and which expresses everything that we really need. Bread for today, forgiveness, strength to live within God's will. The rest, as they say, is icing on the cake.